Right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone again. My name is Carmen Mazzara. I serve as Executive Director of the Association of Professional Schools of International Affairs. But since that is a ridiculously long name, we just generally refer to it as APSIA. I'm delighted to be joined by all of you, of course, and particularly by my colleague Yadira Molina from the Elliott School of International Affairs at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. We will walk through some high-level best practices in applying to grad school, and then Yadira will share some of the special aspects of the Elliott School, and at the very end, we'll be able to take all of your questions in that chat box you see on the right-hand side of your screen. As I mentioned, we will have a recording of this webinar as well as copies of the slides afterwards, so please feel free to reach out if you would like any of that content later on. And forgive me, I'm probably going to repeat that message several times as more of our colleagues log into the session as we go through. So as you start to think about preparing for grad school, we really recommend you take a long-term 12-month or so approach. And the first piece is to cast a wide net and to think about the kinds of programs you want to pursue. There may be degrees that you know and have heard of, and there may be other programs that are going to be a good fit for your goals that perhaps you haven't yet stumbled across. So 12 months out is a really good time to cast a broad net, start to research schools and learn about different programs. We also encourage you to use that long-term perspective to really take a deep look at your own financial situation and start to investigate all of the different kinds of financial aid options, and we'll talk about those a little bit more later. Because this will be the beginning of the process, we encourage you to create a spreadsheet or a Google Doc or whatever you do to keep track of lots of different moving parts. Because as we go through, what you'll see is that you'll have lots of things that need to go to specific places in specific times. So however you keep track of information, it's important to start now, this 12 months out point, to make sure that all the right pieces go to all of those right places. So 5 key questions that we encourage you to ask yourself as you're looking at programs to figure out what is the right fit for you. First, of course, is what will you study? And not just what kinds of programs, but also how is the program structured? Is it very prescriptive? Are they going to dictate most of the courses that you take? Or is it very flexible and you can pull together lots of different pieces? Or is it somewhere along that spectrum? And as you go through, which of those particular approaches fits your needs as well as fits your desires in terms of academic approach and the skills and competencies you're going to end with at the end of the program? Understanding whether you are qualified, and Yadira can speak more to this from the Elliott School's perspective, but getting a general sense of which schools have where you exceed all of the admissions criteria, where it might still be a bit of a stretch, and how competitive you might be for a particular position and for financial aid in that particular school. I say that there's no number necessarily that will get you in to a graduate school and no number that will necessarily keep you out of a graduate school, but it's important to understand how you fall and which schools are a bit of a stretch and which ones you're very solidly within their typical candidate profile. One that students often overlook is whether you like being wherever that school happens to be. If you love a big city, then going to school in College Station, Texas, wonderful as A&M might be, may not be the right fit. And vice versa, if you hate big cities, going to school at Columbia in New York or the Paris School of International Affairs may not be a very good fit if you're going to be miserable for the 2 years of your life that you spend in a particular place. Thinking also about access to internships, jobs, networks of alumni, all of those different pieces can go into assessing the living environment that you'll find yourself in, again, for those 2 years of a typical grad program. Looking at your financial situation, again, this is why we suggest you do this a year out in advance. Can you afford it? How can you make it affordable? What is the burden you're willing to take on, if any? And how does that fit to long-term plans and goals? And of course, I would say the most important question on this list is, what is the professional fit? How does whatever it is you're trying to master, how does that particular program fit into your long-term goals? What skills are you going to build? What is the leverage point that graduate school is into the future professional life that you want to have. And you can read other people's bios, you can read job descriptions, you can read about programs and structures, ask to talk to alumni, all of those things to get a better sense of what that professional fit is in this thing you are about to master. So those are just 5 questions that we encourage you to ask yourself as you try to look at different programs. So 12 months out, you've cast that really broad net. At 9 months, you start to zero in a little bit on particular programs and particular schools. We encourage you, and maybe Yadira doesn't, but we encourage you to reach out to admissions counselors at the schools that you're interested in. And we'll talk a little bit later about some ways APSIA lets you do that. But a really savvy question that you can ask is, what are the priorities of the admissions committee? And that too will help you get a sense not only of your competitive fit, but also what that particular school or program emphasizes and how you can best position yourself in your application materials to show how you are the kind of candidate that they're looking for. You can also start to look at prerequisites, economics, statistics, policy writing, quantitative skills, whatever it is that you need just to be qualified to walk in the door. 9 months out is a really good time to start to look at those things that might be weaknesses in your application and start to address them. If it's something like standardized tests, what's nice about doing them 9 months out is that you also have a good bit of runtime if you need to take them again. And so you have some flexibility if you need to be sure to put forward the best scores and the best version of your application that you can. And now is a good time too to start to put together some of those application materials and track them in that spreadsheet that you created at 12 months out. So typically, what are the kinds of application materials you might need to provide? Every school is going to be different. I'm going to say it again. Every school is going to be different. So please read the directions and follow instructions and use that spreadsheet to make sure that all of the things that a school asks for go to that school. So that said, typically the kinds of things you're going to have to put forward might be an application form and a fee, a CV or a resume, and they are different, so be sure you know which one a school is asking for. Transcripts from every institution you've attended. So if you one time studied abroad and attended the University of Accra in Ghana, and you have credits from there, you're probably going to need to get in touch with them and ask for that transcript. Many schools, but not all, are going to require standardized tests. So again, you're going to need to see what tests they ask for and what their range of expected scores is. They're going to ask for personal statements and or topical essays. So again, getting a sense of what they want and how they want you to submit that kind of writing sample. Letters of recommendation. Sometimes schools will be very specific, whether they want professional ones or academic ones or both. And we can talk about what to do if they don't specify. And then in a lot of cases for financial aid, they're going to want to see your bank statements as well. So again, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is just a sense of the typical things that a school is going to ask for. So you've cast that broad net and you've started to focus, and at 3 to 6 months out is really when the rubber hits the road. You're going to finalize that list of desired programs, and you're going to start to work on putting together the application materials that each school asks for. 3 to 6 months out is a great time to reach out to your recommenders, because if they're anything like me, they're probably going to need a long lead time to actually get it done and to get it done in the way you would hope it would be done. 3 to 6 months is also a good time to knock out some of those pieces that are a little bit easier to put forward. So updating your resumes, starting to request those transcripts, sketching out your essays and your personal statements so that you can have a good time to really refine them. 3 to 6 months out is a good time to keep up with that financial aid planning. The two should be happening side by side, your application search and your financial aid search. Compiling application materials, compiling financial aid materials. Both of those things have to happen simultaneously so that you're ready with financial aid when your grad school decisions come out. If you need to retake any standardized tests, this is also a good time to do it. And then you're going to need to keep checking in with those recommenders throughout this window to make sure that folks are aware of all the deadlines that you have. So 3 to 6 months out is really when you start to put the pieces in place for that competitive application. So how can you make sure that the essays that you put forward showcase what you're looking for? And I will note that as we go through, if folks have any questions, please feel free to type them in that chat box as we go along. Yadira and I can take them at the end, and we will have copies of the slides as well as a recording afterwards. So with these essays and personal statements, I suspect, and from what I'm told by our schools, they really want to see the journey that you're on. They want to know, who were you? What did you do in the past in your professional life, as a volunteer, your life's journey, things that influence and shape who you are today. So who were you, and who are you as this person who now wants to go to graduate school? What do you want to study? Why are you going at this particular moment in time? What's your motivation to take whatever happened in the past and whoever you are now and try to use graduate school as a lever into the future? And then thinking about the future and the continuation of that journey, how is this particular school and this particular program going to be that springboard that you seek? So you don't have to say in your essay, oh, at 15 minutes after graduation, I want this job in this place at this time. But you need to be able to show how graduate school is a continuation of that narrative and a continuation of all of the things that you've done in the past and seeking to be that leverage point into the future. So showing that journey is something really distinct for you and a way to showcase who you are and help you stand out as a candidate amidst what's truly sometimes thousands of other applications that a committee is reading, because only you can tell this particular story and this particular narrative. So it's a really good way to showcase your strengths and your abilities and your story. So about 1 month out is really when all of those pieces need to be refined. You need to finish your application, you need to finish your financial aid applications, you need to check in with all of the people who are writing you recommendations or putting together your transcripts. You're going to continue with your financial aid planning. All of that work you've been doing for the last 12 months is really going to come together and culminate in that wonderful and sometimes a little scary day when you submit all of your requested materials. And all of those pieces are going to come together to showcase who you are and what you're capable of doing. So that's why we recommend this long-term process to really make sure that you can put forward the most competitive version of yourself that you can. So a few ways to avoid making common mistakes and, again, put together that really competitive application. I said this earlier, but please follow directions. You would be amazed at how many of your colleagues and to be honest, competitors cannot do this. They can't follow the part of the application where it says submit 3 letters of recommendation. Maybe they submit 2, maybe they submit 5. Do what the directions asked and submit the 3 that were requested. We also, again, as I said, encourage you to request your transcripts early as well as your recommendations early so that if there was some mix-up, you still have time to get everything in by the deadline. We also encourage you to make sure you proofread and you avoid foolish mistakes. Have someone else read your application. Is the version of you that you're trying to get the committee to see coming forward? Do they understand the sorts of things you're trying to highlight and the story you're trying to tell? I also encourage you to please make sure that the right documents go to the right place. I'm sure Yadira has seen plenty of applications when she works for George Washington University that were addressed to the committee at Georgetown University or Georgia Tech University. So please be sure that the right things go in the right envelope or in the right file. And this is really where your different spreadsheets can be really useful. And so again, avoiding these kinds of foolish mistakes will be a great way for you to stand out from other candidates who make them. And finally, you need to be honest with yourself. Think about it. This is why we encourage you to spend these 12 months. Think about what you want to master and why. If you had a rough couple semesters or if you've had something in your life that really complicated your ability to complete your academic issues, the schools will see that in your transcripts. They'll see that you had a rough couple first semesters coming into undergrad. So perhaps talk about them. Use them as a way to show what you've learned or how you've grown. I'm not saying you have to share every sob story and tell your whole life story, but if there are things that you feel are going to reflect negatively on you or show how perhaps you got off to a bit of a rough start, this is a great way to just own it and to talk about it. And if you're not sure where the line is between oversharing and talking through a challenge that you've overcome, again, this is a great way to be in touch with the admissions offices, give them a basic sketch and say, is this something I should talk about, or is this really something that is a personal situation that isn't going to impact your decision making? So avoiding these common mistakes will just get you in the door at a higher level than people who don't avoid them. So I encourage you all to be careful about the things that you do. Unfortunately, even after all of your materials are submitted, your work isn't done. You need to thank all of your recommenders. You need to make sure that they know that you appreciate the hard work that they've put in, because you never know when you're going to need them again. You need to make sure that the schools received all of the things you think you sent. So be sure that you check online or however they have to show that all of the pieces you believe you put forward, they got. You also need to continue that financial planning and continue the research and discernment between programs. My hope for all of you, of course, is that you get into lots of schools and all the schools you wish, and then you still have to choose one at the end of the day. So I encourage you to continue that research, continue that process, so that when the time comes, you're ready to select between them and among them. So Yadira can probably speak more to what GW looks for, but on the whole, what we talk about is that schools are really looking for a holistic picture of a student to understand how they are going to succeed in that particular program. They're going to want to gauge your aptitude for study, and that's why they want to see your transcripts. That's why they might ask for academic recommendations. That's why they're going to want to see how well you write. It's an academic program. They want to make sure that you are set up for success in that particular program. They're going to want to gauge your aptitude for professional success and your professional direction. This is a master's program after all, and APSIA schools are professional schools focused on long-term career goals. So how does this fit into that bigger picture? That's why they're going to want your resume. That's why they're going to want, again, your writing samples. That's why they're going to want professional letters of recommendation. They want to see how this is part of a larger plan and objective. And then finally, they're going to want to understand how you will set others up for academic and professional success. So that's where talking about some of those challenges you've overcome or life experiences that you've had really let you showcase how you can contribute to the broader classroom and the broader development of everybody else. So those different pieces coming together can be the kinds of things you want to put forward in a holistic way and get the different parts of your application to showcase a really complementary picture of you so that you can show that you're ready for academic success, you're ready for professional success, and you can then help others succeed in those areas too. So we've talked a lot about applying to school, and we've talked a little bit about paying for school. But there's actually a lot of different ways that you can pay for your education. Most schools will have need-based and merit-based aid, and it's important to understand when a school is offering you a grant that you maybe don't have to repay and a loan that you do have to repay. They may have positions that are research or teaching assistant positions where you're matched with a faculty member and support that faculty member for a certain number of hours a week in return for a certain amount of money or a certain amount of waiver on your tuition. It's also important to note that schools will have one pot of money and universities on the whole may have others. So because you've been building that nice relationship with admissions counselors over the last 9 months to a year, it's okay to ask and to say, well, I see that the school has given me this package. Might there be university-wide money that I could compete for? And if the school has that kind of opportunity and you've got a good relationship with them, they may also be able to share some opportunities on the university-wide level to support your education. And then even outside of the school and the university, there are different external sources of funding. Private loans, of course, or federal loans if you are a U.S. citizen or whatever your country might offer. There are different grants and scholarships And there's lots of different ways to conceive of yourself as you try to think about what external sources of funding you can compete for. So as a few examples, you can think of yourself as a future employee. So things like the Pickering, the Wrangle, or the Payne Fellowships are opportunities for U.S. citizens who want to have careers with the U.S. State Department or the U.S. Agency for International Development. So thinking of yourself and your long-term career goals can be ways to think about ways to pay for graduate school. You can also think about the experiences you've had in the past. The Coverdell Fellows Program is for those who were Peace Corps volunteers. So some kind of activity or opportunity that you've done previously may have funding for graduate school attached to it that would enable you to help cover the costs for your education. You can also think about your citizenship and where you're from. The Organization of American States, which covers countries from Canada south all the way down to Chile, has fellowship and graduate opportunities for those who are pursuing master's or doctoral degrees. So thinking about your citizenship, also thinking about your heritage. If your family came from Lithuania, Latvia, or Estonia, there are opportunities through the Baltic American Foundation, for example, to fund your postgraduate study. So not only your current citizenship, but perhaps your family history and your lineage. And then finally, sometimes it's about an academic or a training program that you've completed as well. So something like the Public Policy and International Affairs, or PPIA program, couples intensive training in economics and quantitative analysis and policy writing with support for graduate education. So all of these different ways that you can think of yourself, your ethnicity, your citizenship, your gender, your nationality, your career goals, your past experiences, all of those might have opportunities to help you fund graduate school. So conceiving of all of those different hats can really help you think of creative ways to research funding for grad school. So I'm almost done with my portion, and then I'll turn the floor over to Yadira. But I specifically wanted to talk about all of the different possibilities that come from studying international affairs specifically. A lot of folks really know the traditional routes like diplomacy and development and defense, but international affairs touches pretty much every aspect of our life. And so you can couple an education in international affairs with a focus on energy and the environment, or education, or human rights, or communications and public relations. All of these different pieces come together as we look at how the world is connected and how people can make a difference by looking at the way those interconnections among people and places and products really influence one another. And by studying international affairs, we know that you get that interdisciplinary, holistic look at how the world is interconnected, which is so important whether, again, you're interested in business or trade or education or policy or science. They're all influenced by how countries and people and products relate to one another across our national borders. To be competitive both for jobs but also for graduate school, there's really several things that we recommend you think about. One, of course, is professional experience, and it might be in an internship or a job. It could be with a volunteer opportunity. And we also specifically encourage you to think about professional experience outside of your home country and how you can really build up your skill set when you have that cross-cultural, cross-national experience. We know that students who can write well and speak comfortably in front of lots of different audiences have a competitive advantage. You need to be able to take all of the things that you know in your head or have spent years researching and convey them to others, whether it's in written form or orally in front of diplomats and heads of state and government, or high school students or college students or whomever it is. Knowing all of those things and not being able to convey it doesn't matter if you can't get it out of your brain and into someone else's mind or onto a piece of paper. So you really, if you're not comfortable writing or you're not comfortable speaking in front of groups, now is a good time to practice those things, or when you're in your academic program, because these are critical skill sets that will really set you apart in a professional environment. We also encourage you to think about how an idea becomes an action, understanding how something moves from stage 1 to stage 10. Project management doesn't necessarily have to be a formal thing. It can be a project or a program you started with a club or with your faith community, Whatever it is, being able to show that you don't just think of ideas, you know how to execute them, you know how to bring others along with you and make something into a reality. And finally, thinking about your network. It could be your supervisor at work or in your internship. It could be your peers and your fellow classmates, faculty members, alumni of your school or programs that you've participated in. All of these people can not only be useful for letters of recommendation, but they can give good advice. They can point you in a direction of schools or programs or opportunities that you might never have known about. So being someone who cultivates those kinds of relationships, cultivates those networks, and then keeps them alive and keeps in touch is a really important skill set. And again, not just for writing letters of recommendation 3 years after you graduated, but for your whole professional life as you try to navigate all of the different pieces that you may have to do. And so with that, I'm delighted to turn the floor over to Yadira, and she'll really unpack a specific APSIA member, one of our founding members actually, the Elliott School of International Affairs. Yadira.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me okay? You want to type in the chat box just to let me know that you can. All right, looks like we're all good. Hi, everyone. My name is Yadira Molina, and I am the Graduate Admissions Counselor here with the Elliott School of International Affairs. Thanks for joining us this morning. Carmen went through a ton of really fabulous information, and this is being recorded, so if you missed anything, be sure that you look back on that. So I'm going to start by talking about the different programs that we offer. So we have programs that are available full-time or part-time. What you can do is if you are a full-time student, you would be studying for about 3 classes per semester. So that's going to be about 9 credits. But all programs are also available part-time, which means that you would take 1 or 2 classes a semester and you have up to 5 years to complete the degree. Whereas as a full-time student, it would be about 2 years. So we offer programs that are regionally focused, such as Asian Studies, European and Eurasian Studies, Middle East, or also a little bit more general, such as Security Policy and International Affairs. Our special MA programs are listed on the right, and these are for anyone who is a mid-career professional, so you already have 8 or more years of experience, or if you received a master's from one of our institutional partner schools around the world and are looking to get a second, and then you would be eligible for the MA in International Studies. Our biggest and probably most flexible program is our International Affairs program. So Carmen talked earlier about how different programs allow students to pick and choose exactly what it is that they want to focus on, whether it be in terms of concentrations or classes, and the IA program really fits that bill very well. That program allows for just up to 2 concentrations. So all students need to have at least one. It can either be a regional concentration or global issues, for example, U.S. foreign policy or national security. And alternately, what you can do is there are spaces for a second concentration or electives that support your first concentration. And lastly, you can create your own. So with the help of our academic advisors and the program director, what you could do in theory is come up with your own concentration that is made specifically for maybe a career goal that you have, or maybe there's a specific skill that you're looking to develop. You can create your own concentration under the International Affairs program. So that's something that I would keep in mind. So we offer a ton of resources to our graduate students as well. And the Graduate Student Services Office that opened last fall is probably the most valuable aspect of student life here for graduate students at the Elliott School. So there are 3 different components to our GSS office, and it's academic advising, international education, which is just another fancy term for study abroad, and career development. So there's academic advisors that are split up by program. So depending on the program that you're in, you'll have a set academic advisor. Students are more than welcome to reach out to professors to speak to them in regards to whether it be career development or even looking at different classes that would fill your academic requirements. But in terms of set assigned advisors, they are academic advisors that are coming out of this office. In terms of study abroad, we have partner institutions all around the world. There's 18. All of them teach courses in English, except for our partner in Argentina, which teaches in Spanish, and our partner in Morocco, which teaches in French. But you can transfer up to 10 credits back to the Elliott School from a partner institution around the world. And typically the way that study abroad is done is students can go away for a semester and bring back up to 10 credits, so that's a full-time course load. Alternately, what students have done is take just 1 or 2 courses abroad and spend the rest of their time doing internship. Another thing that students have done in the case that they don't have the time or the resources to be away for a full semester, there's also short-term study abroad that's available during the summer sessions. And those usually last about 2 to 4 weeks, so they're a little bit less of a time commitment, but you're still taking courses, whether it be at a university or in the case of our non-state actors course in Israel, that one's based out of a hotel where the professor actually brings speakers to the hotel meeting rooms and then also takes students out to see the Holy City and other historical sites around Tel Aviv. Lastly is our career development component of GSS, which is probably the most valuable section of GSS for our students, specifically because we have 2 full-time career coaches, both who actually have experience having worked in government and private sectors in the past, who are there to work with students one-on-one, whether it be for resume building, practicing interview skills if you get a little nervous in one-on-one situations, if you're looking for an internship, and all of the services that they provide are also available to you as an alum of the Elliott School. So if, say, 10 years after getting your master's degree, you want to go into a different sector or move on to a different career path, you could come back to GSS and meet with a career coach to speak to that. So there are also 3 to 5 professional development events that happen every week during the fall and spring semesters. So basically what this means is these are workshops or different panel discussions that are hosted by the Career Development Office. In the past, we have had workshops that are hosted by our liaison from State Department on how to pass the Foreign Service Officer test. We've had lawyers come onto campus to give info sessions on getting a security clearance. And there's also different networking opportunities as well. For example, at the beginning and end of every year, we have huge celebrations here at the Elliott School where we bring current students and alumni as well as staff and other faculty on for welcome back receptions and starting the new year. So it's a really great way to connect with others and really build that network that Carmen was talking about earlier. Unfortunately, internships do not count for credit here at the Elliott School. We can add a 0 credit class as an internship on your transcript, but otherwise any internship done at the master's level does not count for any credit towards your master's degree at the Elliott School. So here is just a quick fact sheet in terms of what the Elliott School has to offer. As I mentioned, we have partner schools around the world and a variety of different graduate and certificate programs. We have something called skills courses that are also integrated into each of our programs. And these skills courses are curated by our career development office after they receive the feedback from employer surveys that are sent out every year, where essentially the career office is reaching out to employers both in the US and across the globe, asking them what they're looking for in competitive candidates to jobs and internships that they offer. So from that feedback, we're able to curate courses that are really meant to build professional skills that will actually make our students more marketable in the long term in terms of their career, but also be extremely helpful in terms of, getting their things together for their classes. A lot of the courses, such as writing for international affairs professionals, are actually applicable to our students when they're in the classroom. And another thing to keep in mind, I know Carmen was talking about having all of the application materials aligned. We are very fortunate that we do not require GRE scores for most of our programs. The only program that requires GRE scores is global communication, and we do not have any sort of minimum GPA or score requirement, and we don't post our averages since we don't collect that information anymore, since we do not require the GRE. So just keep in mind that it's optional. If you take the GRE for any other applications from another school and you still want your scores to be considered, you can definitely send them, but it won't hinder your application if you choose not to or choose not to submit scores. So just something to keep in mind when you're applying. In terms of financial aid, again, as soon as you know that you want to go to grad school is when you should start looking for money, and ideally free money that you don't have to pay back. So if you want to be considered for fellowships here at the Elliott School and you're applying for a fall semester, you must submit your application by January 7th. So this is the fellowship deadline, meaning we'll accept applications after this point for a fall semester, but anything submitted after this date will not be considered for funding. So all of the fellowships that are offered from the Elliott School are based on merit. We do not offer need-based awards, and typical fellowships range from about $4,000 to $10,000 per semester, and they are only applicable towards the cost of tuition. They also cannot be combined with any other offers of money from the George Washington University. So if you get a separate award, unless it indicates otherwise, you cannot combine awards from the Elliott School or from the George Washington University. There's also funding available for international students. A common question we get is, is there a separate application if you're an international versus domestic student? And there is not. Really, all you have to do to be considered for funding, including the Global Funding Initiative listed here, is submit a complete application by January 7th. And again, this is for a fall semester. And in terms of other deadlines, or excuse me, other fellowships that are available, the Office of Graduate Student Assistantships and Fellowships is extremely helpful, although some of the links are only going to be for GW students. They also link out to a variety of different third-party opportunities for students to find funding outside of GW that still applies to them as a graduate student at the Elliott School. And I see a question here, is work study different than fellowships? Yes, so you can get a fellowship and work study, but students have to apply for work study differently. Additionally, in order to keep that work study, you still need to apply for a separate position on campus according to whatever the work study offers in terms of the authorization. So for deadlines, we are currently accepting applications for fall and spring of 2019. So our next deadline is October 1st, and that would be for any student who's interested in starting in the spring semester. So that's going to be about mid-January, and this is for fellowship and admissions consideration. Something to keep in mind is that more funding is available in the fall. So if you're really hoping to get like $10,000 in the spring, it's not very likely. We have a smaller pool of applicants that are coming in for spring, and so we just tend to have less money available since most of that is for fall when we have most of our students incoming and starting the semester. Alternately, if you're applying for a fall semester, the deadline for fellowship and admission consideration is January 7th, and the final admission deadline is February 1st. Again, anything submitted after the 7th is not considered for funding and is only considered for admission into the specific programs. So in terms of applying, as I said, all of our applications for spring and fall of 2019 are already open and live online. We will require a resume or a CV. There's no minimum or maximum length. It can be as long or as short as you'd like for it to be. A statement of purpose, that's 500 words or less, and the prompts are available online. If anyone is applying for an MIPP program, you would also be submitting an MIPP essay, and the prompt for that is also on the website. There are also transcripts that you'll need to submit. For our purposes, we can accept unofficial transcripts. So if you have a PDF screenshot, that's totally fine. The things that we're looking for in a transcript, again, it can be unofficial, is that it has to show the name of the institution, the name of the course, the credits received, and the grades received. So if any of this information is missing in the transcript, we will reach out to you and ask for that information. We'll also require 2 letters of recommendation, and one of them must be from academia, so it can be a professor, either that you worked with or at a class with, and then the other can be at your discretion. So it can either be a second professor, or it can be a professional reference, or anyone that can speak to your ability to be successful in a master's program. And then lastly, we'll require GRE scores if you're applying to global communication. Just today, we got confirmation that Asian studies will no longer require GRE scores. So you can disregard that. The only program at the Elliott School that requires GRE scores is the global communication program. All other programs do not require GRE scores. Also, if you are an international student coming from a foreign university, you will need to submit official English language test scores as well to consider during the application. A couple things to keep in mind is when you're going through the application and uploading documents, Please be sure that you're following our tips and tricks on our website, and be sure that, as Carmen said, you are spelling Elliott right. It's 2 L's and 2 T's. And it is Elliott School of International Affairs. We're part of the George Washington University. Another thing to keep in mind is to please submit all documents in PDF format. That way nothing kind of gets lost or edited during the process. Things can kind of get stuck, and it also makes it difficult for some of the faculty to view documents when they are in PDF format. So please be sure that you're doing that. And otherwise, I know another thing that we'll get questions on is the kind of student that we're looking for in terms of competitive applicants to the Elliott School. And as Carmen said, there's really no magic kind of trick to this. It's really just a matter of, through your materials, how are you able to show the admissions committee that you are prepared for a master's program and that the Elliott School master's program is the best fit for what you're looking for. And another thing that I would keep in mind, and this is just something that I've thought about since I applied to graduate schools a couple years ago, is that it can be really easy for students to want to conform themselves to what they think a program wants, specifically with kind of the name brand schools. And I think something that's really important for students to consider isn't necessarily, how can I get into this school, but switching the focus into, what is the school going to offer me? So when you are doing that research, and I definitely recommend doing as much research as you can, if you're going to email us a question and we can answer it through a link that's on our website, that's one of the things that, doesn't necessarily make us the happiest, but we would definitely recommend that you do all your research and consider, what does this school have to offer me? Consider yourself the hot commodity that we want. So it can be, again, really easy to want to, speak in a different voice in your statement of purpose and things like that, but it's really important to make sure that your authentic voice comes across. We do see thousands of applications every year, and so if we see something that's kind of copy and pasted, it's something that's really obvious. So again, just some things to keep in mind. We'll also be open every Thursday and Tuesday, so including today, for online office hours. So if you're interested in chatting one-on-one with us, you're more than welcome to do that. And again, if you are looking to apply for spring, that application is already open, as well as the applications for fall. So without further ado, I'll throw it back to Carmen for any other closing comments.
Thanks, Yadira. And as I said, we have plenty of time for questions, and it looks like folks have taken full advantage of the chat box, but please keep them coming. I do want to highlight a few other ways that you all can get more information or continue the research or begin the research that we've encouraged you to do. APSIA holds a number of events around the world and online throughout the fall. And I'll show you more in a minute, will be in a variety of cities in North America in September and in Europe in November. And you can find all of those events as well as school and member events at apsia.org/events, the first link you all can see on your screen. We also have a fellowships and scholarships guide. So in addition to the resources that Yadira mentioned the Elliott School has, we have a filterable directory, and you may be able to find some new external funding opportunities that you didn't know about before. We have profiles of all of our members in our affiliated schools on our website at the graduate school programs link you see. And then as you are exploring the many different career options and trying to figure out how to find a program that is a fit or what else is possible, we have a whole career guide on our website that showcases a lot of different opportunities, offers some tips, and has some suggested organizations as well. We're active on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, where we regularly post internships, jobs, fellowship opportunities, event information, alumni stories, student stories, to really tell to show you what's possible and what you can do with an APSIA degree. We have different pieces of advice on our YouTube channel and through our LinkedIn page. So I encourage you to stay in touch with us, and my email is also on the slide in front of you, as a great way to continue the exploration and continue the process. And if you would like to get some face time with schools, and as Yadira said, go one step deeper than the generic information that's posted on a website, or to put forward your personal questions that might be more specific than a school might answer in their brochure, we have events coming up in Montreal, Atlanta, New York, Philadelphia, and DC. That's September 11th through the 18th. And then in November, we will be in Paris, London, and Madrid. And if you are not in any of those cities, we do move around the globe each year, but this is our plan for 2018. And we hope you will join us if you're not in any of those places online as a way to reach all of the students who are not in the cities we're able to visit this year. So if you visit the events page, you can register. You'll also find on each of the event pages the list of schools that are planning to attend. For someplace like DC, we have, I think, 24 or 25 schools from all over the world who will be coming to town. So it's really, again, a great way to start to build that relationship, start to get some of your personal questions answered, and to start to get your name out there as a candidate for these different programs. So, and again, you'll be able to see the schools that are participating, or at least who have registered to date, on the event pages for each of those particular cities. So with that, we're able to open the floor up for questions, and we'll do our best, and I'm probably going to force Yadira to answer most of these because she is our resident expert. But Yadira, Kevin asks if he attended a community college for a term and then transferred to a different community college and then finished at a university, do you need official transcripts from every place or just the ones where he was at for a particular period of time?
Yeah, so depending on the school, for GW specifically, we'll accept unofficial transcripts. So if those community college courses appear on the university transcript, that'll be fine. But if the grades, courses, or credits don't appear, then we'll ask for that community college transcript.
And I think that's pretty common. Most, if they want to see the information, and so it depends on how many transcripts it takes to get all of the information. And it looks like Eli says some schools like GWU allow students to take another measurement, like the initial interview, in place of a GRE. Do you have advice on how the admissions board might treat these things differently? And I know that you talk a little bit about this in the comments, Yadira, but can you explain what an initial view is and then see how the committee may weigh that particular factor?
Yeah, so actually, as of today, we are no longer accepting initial view. It was something that was provided as an alternate for students who didn't want to take the GRE for the Asian Studies program. But as of today, the Asian Studies program no longer requires GRE and will no longer accept the initial view. So that information is still in the process of being updated on our website. But in terms of other ways to stand out, really the only thing I can suggest is reaching out to schools directly if you want to add an addendum or add any additional materials to your application that aren't otherwise called for in the application. What you can do is just reach out to each school individually and say, hey, I'd really like to add an addendum that explains, this grade in this class. Or if you wanted to add an addendum that, addresses really any other part of your application, you can do that. But otherwise, things like initial view, I wasn't familiar. We hadn't actually seen an applicant use that in the past. And this was only kind of one cycle in which we had that as an option. So we're actually really excited to no longer be requiring that because it really opens up the application for all students who might not otherwise be able to do that.
And I believe you talked about the change in GRE scores and how the only program that still requires them is the Global Communications program. And it looks like we have a student, Galia was wondering if you can apply for 2 different programs at Elliott, or how do schools look at it when candidates are trying for multiple programs at the same time?
Yeah, so students can apply for as many programs as they want. It's not a problem, and it doesn't necessarily reflect well or badly on the student for doing so. But something to keep in mind is if you are applying for more than one program, you still need to pay for each individual application, and you still need to upload all the materials to each application separately. And while you may be admitted to more than one program at the Elliott School, you will still only be able to enroll into one program. So we offer joint degrees with the Business School, the School of Law, and the School of Public Health, but you cannot take 2 degrees within the Elliott School Master's programs.
One thing I will add to that is ask yourself whether you can make a compelling case for both of them or whether you're hedging your bets between them, because in some schools, and I'm not sure about the Elliott school, different committees will be reading them. And so they won't know that you've sort of half done one and half done another. They're going to just be looking at whether you're competitive for their program. So be sure you can tell a compelling narrative about why each of those specific programs appeals to you. And if there's one that you really can't construct a compelling narrative, maybe that's a great way to focus your application. So we have a student who has made a board game about Chinese modern political history. Are there pieces like that that are useful for committees to see? Do you want to actually see it? If there are additional supplemental information, how much is too much, and where is the right line in what they send to a committee?
Yeah, so we would not accept a board game. You know, we do have a line, we can accept any document that can be attached online in a, you know, application. Anything physical, we cannot and will not be adding to any application. So we've had students in the past actually try to submit documents physically without doing the online application. And I invite all of our attendees to join 2018 and keep in mind that we're trying to keep everything as green as possible. We're a green office, and so the reason that we don't carry brochures and accept paper applications or even paper materials unless they're official transcripts is because we're very proud to be the greenest office on campus and the only green office at the Elliott School. So something to keep in mind is, you know, what can I attach in an email and will this work? Pictures we won't accept. It really just has to be a text document. So we won't accept, you know, board games or any other physical pieces of an application as additions to that application to be considered.
Eli also had a similar question about the YouTube content that's been created, and it sounds like the answer is links in a CV is a stronger way to put those pieces forward. Is that right?
Yeah, so you can definitely put links in a CV, but again, it doesn't mean that they will necessarily be clicked on by the committee. Again, we see thousands of applications, and so if we clicked through everything in all of the application pieces, it would take a lot longer to review. So although you can put those links in your application materials, keep in mind that we may not be referencing them. We really are just wanting to focus on whatever it is that you have submitted to us directly. So if you are trying to make us see a YouTube video or link us to your LinkedIn, not only is that probably not going to be considered, but it's just kind of extra work on your part, and you are likely asking us to review information that won't be considered as part of the admissions decision.
And I think that's an important point. Just like with a job application, understanding or thinking about it from the perspective of the reader is going to be an important piece to putting together your narrative as to why you're a competitive candidate. If the program or the materials that you're putting forward really are solely about you, and again, not about your professional goals or how you want to contribute to something or how you can help strengthen the classroom conversation, it may not be as strong and as competitive as if you're able to showcase how what you've done informs who you are and what you're able to bring into the classroom and into that longer term professional setting.
Yeah, and then kind of to speak to that, in terms of doing research and having that guide you through the application process, I would definitely recommend making sure that you're going through the program that you're looking at and not just looking at, you know, the first page that comes up that just gives the summary, but actually do some digging. Go and see what are the core curriculum requirements, what courses are part of that program, and what are the concentrations that are available, what classes are under that concentration. If you want to sit in on a class, if we go on the Elliott School website, we actually give that as an option to students who want to sit in on a class, and you can also connect with a current student in a program or an alum. So again, doing that research ahead of time is extremely valuable. That way, when you're coming to us with any questions regarding your application or, you know, what program you fit in, you know, those are the kind of questions that are really best answered by any investigation that you've done. It's really hard for us to answer what program is best for you when you are the one applying to the program. You know, we don't know exactly what you're interested in and what would really fit in with what your career goals are. And as an admissions office, we also are career coaches. So we can't necessarily give you one-on-one kind of hand-holding style guidance on exactly what program you should apply to. We're more than happy to answer questions on, the courses. We can refer you to the programs themselves, or, what are the requirements for graduation. But in terms of what program works for me, those questions are really going to be answered by your own research, looking into those courses, and by reaching out to us to see what other ways you can connect with the school to learn more about what it is that sets us apart.
And to go back to kind of where we started, that's really why the discernment process in the beginning is so important. And it's also great because you can turn up schools and programs that you may have never thought of before or understood before, and come to see and explore those too. And that's where the in-person events can also be a great opportunity, because if the line to speak to Yadira is 17 people long, you can perhaps go learn about some schools with no additional cost or investment for you until that line shortens a bit, and then go and pick her brain about how to be even more competitive for the Elliott School. And with that, Yadira, we have one other question about how some schools ask for a one-page resume specifically. Does Elliott have a preferred length or a recommended length for the resume piece?
No, we do not. So the resume can either be as long or as short as you'd like for it to be. We don't have a minimum or maximum requirement.
And that too can be a great bit of guidance to look for on a school's website or an FAQ section. Most schools have heard these questions before, and so that's a great way it's the common thing they may have to answer. Looks like we have a few other questions coming in. We have about 5 minutes left, so now is a great time if you have general questions about applying to grad school overall, or specific ways to be noticed and seen by the Elliott School. As Sarah said, 2 L's and 2 T's. And we laugh, but again, many of your colleagues and compatriots don't spell it correctly. And what that says to a committee is that student doesn't pay enough attention or isn't really that interested in the school enough to care to spell the school's name right. So Lynn says some schools have been looking at ask for a motivation letter when applying for financial aid. What advice do you have regarding how to be compelling in your motivation letter?
I can't really speak to that since we don't accept those types of letters for fellowships. We just go through the actual application. But something I would keep in mind is to just make sure that you are speaking with your own voice, speaking to why you would make someone who would be worthy of a fellowship or extra funding, maybe speaking a little bit to what you plan on doing as a student while you are at that institution, kinds of courses you plan to take, or maybe extracurriculars you want to participate in, whether that be on-campus student groups or any sort of organization off campus. So really talking about what you plan to do as a student and how that extra financial help is going to give you the leeway to be more successful as a student in that program.
And I think that's good advice for all of your materials. The more you can show direction and show honest motivation and not formulaic. I'm sure Yadira's read hundreds and hundreds of applications that all begin with the same Gandhi quote or the same Malala Yousafzai quote or something. So make it sound like you really sound, and the version of yourself that is going to fit with that program and the kinds of things that they're looking for. And if you're not sure what that's the kinds of things, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I would also recommend being as specific as possible. It's very common for us to see really broad strokes where I want to volunteer with refugees, or I want to work in the State Department. It helps to be really specific. I would really like to work with female refugees who are victims of sexual and gender-based violence out of Syria. That's something that you would never hear. So if you can be really specific about, what your interests are, where you want to go, or an experience that you had, whether it be for your statement of purpose or for, a letter of intent for additional funding, being specific is going to be extremely helpful and can really help, admissions committees link together what the student has to offer and how it's going to relate and contribute to the community at the school that they're applying to.
And as we wrap up, one piece I want to highlight about what Yadira just said is she didn't say, I want to specifically work for the High Commission on Refugees at the UN, or I want to specifically work for this company, but she articulated a community that resonated with her, a particular issue, a particular challenge in the world that could be addressed by you. So it doesn't have to be a specific job or a specific organization, but being able to show direction and show what really drives you, what interests you, that's what's compelling about that kind of motivational letter or personal statement or any of those pieces.
Yeah, it's a lot more specific than I want to be the Secretary of State, which a lot of people would like that job. But again, being specific, realistic is extremely helpful in your application.
So with that, we're going to wrap up. I hope if you have other Elliott School specific questions, you will join Yadira and the colleagues at their office hours later today. They have them regularly, and if you follow them on Twitter, you can easily find when they're having them. They will also be at many of our in-person grad school fairs, so you can get to know them that way. I hope we will see you at more of our events online and in person. And if you, again, would like copies of the slides or to watch this presentation again, we'll have all of those materials available shortly. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you in particular, Yadira, for all of your insights. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hopefully seeing all of you as APSIA students in the future.
Thanks, everyone.